just very quickly about me. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for around about 10 years, got a lot of certifications and trailhead badges along the way. But the thing that I'm really interested in is in flow and in user interface design. So this session actually is a bit of both of those, because we do a screen flow and it's got a bit of user interface design in it as well. Now, I know that if I pronounce it correctly, Kanyakumari, where you're from, is right in the southern tip of India. Well, I'm on the northern side of Australia in Queensland, north of Brisbane, based in a small regional town called Bundaberg, and that's where we make the famous Bundaberg rum. So anybody who's been to Australia and had a Bundy and rum and cola or a Coke would be familiar with that, and this is where we make it. So we grow a lot of sugar cane here. It's quite warm tropical climate by the coastline. So our session today, we're going to take a look at a new feature. Now, this is a Spring 24 brand new feature about repeating sections. Now, there's some good things about it and there's some not so good things about it. And we'll talk about both of those. So let's close that part and then we'll jump back to... Okay, the first thing I want to do, now Peter, can I just double check with you? Can you see my Salesforce screen okay?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes?
Yes, it is visible. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Now, I just want to clarify something here. We're using what's called a pre-release instance. So this is not a preview instance, it's a pre-release instance. These are hosted on GS0, so you might be familiar with other Salesforce instances like NA7 or some of the other ones in Asia Pacific might be called AP9, for example, the name of the Salesforce instance. Well, GS0 is a special one, and that has these pre-release instances. So these come out about a week before the release notes come out. Okay, so the release notes came for our next version of Salesforce came out in early December. Excuse me, about the 21st of December or thereabouts. This was available about a week before that. Okay, so what we're looking at is a Spring 24 feature. So if I refresh this, you'll see the new logo. Okay, there it is there. Right, so this is a Spring 24. Now, if you're looking at...
Hi, Daryl Moon. Sorry for interrupting. Your voice is not clear properly hearing. Can you please check once?
How's that? Is audio?
It is good now. Thanks. Thank you.
My apologies. I had the microphone popped up. Okay, so we're using Spring 24. So if you're looking for that in your sandbox or your production environment, I think the release dates for Spring 24, I think there's one in January and the other two are in February. Okay, so if you go thinking, oh, wow, this is great, I want to go have a look at it, you might have to wait unless you have one of these special pre-release instances. Okay, as I said, it's not a preview. It's a pre-release, and these get repopulated every release. So once you've got one, you hang on to it. They get populated every release about a week before the release notes come out, and you can jump in there and have a look and see what's brand new. So we're going to have a look at this brand new feature, and rather than build it and then demo it, I'm going to do it the other way around. So I'm going to demo what I've built, and then we'll go and build it again. So the new feature is a repeater element in Flow. So I've built one, and what it's going to allow us to do is add contacts to this account record. So we want to add some new contacts. At the moment, you can see all we've got is one, Jack Rogers, is the only contact. So we've built a screen flow and we've created an action button, and I've put it up the top right here called repeater. Now what it's going to allow me to do is to add some contacts. So we'll call one contact. I just have to be careful that my email address is valid, otherwise I'll get an error. And I'll talk about validation when we get to building this component. Okay, so what this flow action or this repeater component allows you to do is to go, okay, I actually want to add 5 contacts here, so I can add the first one, and then I can click this button, add, and now I can go straight on and add on the next one. And then I can add one more. We'll just do 3. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3. We'll give him a capital T for his name. And of course, at some stage, if we'd made a mistake, we could remove one of these if we wish to. But we're happy with that, and we're going to click next to go and add all 3 of these new contacts and relate them to this record. So there we go. We've got 3 contacts added. We didn't populate all the fields, so we didn't populate title and some of the others. We've just done the bare bones to prove the concept. Okay, so that's what this repeater element does, is allows you to add multiple records. Now, another use case for this could be on an opportunity, we might want to add multiple tasks that we need to be done. Okay, give the user the facility to add multiple tasks. Or on an account, give them the option to add multiple cases. Okay, so anything where you need to add multiple related records, this is a really good use case for. Okay, so now we'll go and have a look at the flow and see how it's built. So I've got it here. I've called it repeater add contacts. I'll just increase the zoom a little bit when it displays. Okay, we'll just make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so we've got a screen flow and we've got an element here for adding new contacts. Inside that, there is 4 fields and then a text box. And then we've got this add component, this add button automatically put in there, and also the remove one automatically put in there for us as well. Okay, so that's just the heading section. But here is the actual component. And if we scroll down on the left-hand side, we'll find, there it is, in display. So normally we just had display text and section. Now we've got this new, and it's a beta feature, repeater. So we basically drag that in and then we place our fields inside that. Okay, so those 4 fields are inside there. And so is that component. So that's the whole section that's going to repeat each time. And then outside of that, we've got our normal buttons to finish and previous, pause, whatever we want to do there. Okay, so that's the guts of the new component as how it works. Now, how do we then, so it creates a collection of those contacts for us. We now need to assign those to records. Okay, so we've got a collection of those name, what were the 4 fields? We had first name, last name, phone, and email. So we've got a collection of records with those 4 fields, but we need to turn them into contacts. And the other thing that we also need to do is we need to add the account ID in there as well, so that those new contacts will be assigned to, or will be related to, the account record. Okay, so let's have a loop at the loop. So inside here, and here's another new flow feature as well, is you'll start to see them using this right-hand side panel for the configuration of a lot of these elements now. Okay, not all of them are done, but they're starting to. Okay, so the key thing here is, besides giving it a name, we've got this collection variable, and this collection variable is the repeater component, which is the one that we've mentioned in here, and the repeater component part of that name is the actual name of that repeater section. Okay, and then all items basically means, okay, all of the records that came from that component. Okay, so we're going to loop through all of those from first to last. Okay, so just a standard loop from one to the next one. And then we go through the loop. Now, we've got a couple of variables, and I'll show you how these are used. Again, you'll see the right-hand side panel used for configuration, which is nice. Now, I've used the format of r_contact to mean this is my single record of a contact that I'm going to populate with. So firstly, I'm going to assign it an ID to the account ID field, and that's going to come from my page, meaning from the account page that I'm currently on. So that's that special record ID variable that we'll pass into there. Next, we've got our first name, last name, phone number, and email that comes straight off the loop. Okay, because we're looping through those collection variables that came from that repeater component. All right, so as we go through each one of those, we're grabbing from the loop name, putting it into their phone, email, etc. Okay, so we're populating that single record. Once we've done that, so we've done those 5 fields, they're the only ones that we're doing for contact. There's a couple others that will default, things like record owner and so on, obviously will be assigned to us because we've run the flow. And then the last step is we take that record, that R contact, and we assign that into our collection variable of contacts. So this is another collection variable that I've created, and we'll create these at the start. So this is like our big box of contact records, whereas in this first assignment statement, we just had the single record because we were going through one by one and we're assigning the values into that record. Now we're taking that whole record and saying, right, add that one into this box of contacts. And then we go back and we do the next record in that loop. We assign the individual values, and at the end, we grab that whole contact record and we put it in our box of contacts. When we get to the end and there are no more, we then go and we create our new records. And it's basically just a matter of we create multiple records from our collection of contact records. So that big box of contacts that we've been creating as we're looping through these records. Okay, so it's a relatively simple flow, but it brings in a new component and a couple of other items as well, dealing with loops and assignments. Now, there's a couple of comments that I could make on here. One I'll tell you about, the other one I'll leave to see if anybody picks up, because there is a small problem in this flow. It's not what I would call best practice. Okay, so the one thing that we could do, this assignment here, we could actually bunch them together with this one, because this one, all we're doing is going add that single contact record, and we're using the add, not the equals. We're saying add everything from there into there. We could have done it as the last statement down here. problem there is if we decided that we wanted to add a couple more fields to our contact, we'd have to delete our bottom one, add those fields in, and then put our other one in again, because we've got no option to move them, so there's no rearrange them. Okay, and it's also a little bit easier, a little bit clearer to read, that you can see here we're assigning the values to the individual record, and then here we're assigning that record, putting into the box with all of the other records. Okay, but you can do those two in one step. Now, I mentioned that there's something that's not best practice about this. If anybody can tell me what that is, I want you to put a message in the chat, and we'll come back and have a look at that later and see if I might get, oh, we've got some messages in there. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it was just about the audio. All right. All right. We'll come back and have a look at that later and see if, where were we? Yeah. And see if anybody picks it up. But it's something to do with this create records. Okay, so let's leave that one. So that one works. We've seen that working. We're now going to build it from scratch. Don't know what I saved, but I'm happy to leave that. Okay, so we're going to do all of that from scratch. So we'll create a new flow. And we've got a choice here. We've got quite a few choices now. We can have a screen flow, which is an interactive flow where, like we just saw, where the user can select things, okay? So the user can type some input in, click some buttons, make some decisions along the way. With Process Builder and Workflow Rules, we could never do anything like that. We never had an option to build something like a screen flow before. You would have had to have built something with Apex for that. Okay, so that's brand new to Flow. Well, brand new. It's something that we never had before in Process Builder and Workflow Rules. We also got record triggered flow, which is a bit more like what we would have done with Process Builder or Workflow Rules. So when something happens with a record, so a record is created or it's updated or perhaps it's deleted, then that triggers this flow to run, and it runs in the background. Okay, so like Process Builder or Workflow Rules, but we can add a bit more complexity. A scheduled triggered flow runs at a certain time. So if you want something to run at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, this is your one, scheduled triggered flow. We can also trigger flows from a platform event. Okay, so there might be something that occurs on the Salesforce platform, and that could be from an external application that generates what's called a platform event, and we can trigger a flow from that as well. We can have an auto launch flow which has no trigger, but is invoked by Apex or Process Builder, or, well, not so much Process Builder anymore, by an API or something else, and can actually be launched by another flow as well. Or we can have a record triggered orchestration. Now, an orchestration is a bit like a mega flow. Okay, if you think of something, a complex business process like onboarding a new staff member, okay, where there's lots and lots of people involved and lots of little steps along the way. For example, you've got a new staff member, so somebody has to add them to payroll. So you send off a request to somebody to add them to the payroll system. You've got to get IT to create a new user account for them. When that's been done, IT's got to allocate them a new laptop. They've got to get a security pass for the building. They've got to go somewhere and have their security photo taken, etc., etc. Okay, so record triggered orchestration can be built from multiple flows all joined together to do a really complex process. But today we're sticking with a really simple screen flow. Okay, now before we start adding some elements to it, if we go back here to our account record where we had this on the page, so we had a button that was going to run our flow. When we run this flow, we want these contacts to be related to this account, and that's what happened when we created them. So they all appeared here on the related list for contacts, because not only did we fill in these fields about the contact, but we also said that their related account, their account ID, is Burlington Textiles. So we've got to pass the ID, not the name, but the actual ID of this account from this page into the flow. Okay, because Flow doesn't know anything about this account record that we've got on the page. It's got no idea about that. It's a completely separate world. So for that button to be able to go, okay, run the flow, we also need to pass across that ID. So this is where we add in our new resource, and it's a variable, and its name is record ID. The really important part here is that I. It's a capital I. Okay, so it's a record, capital I, lowercase d. The case of the whole thing is really important. And so this is the ID of the account we are creating contacts for. Okay, and on this occasion, we're just going to create it as text. So we're going to say, just pass across the text value of that Burlington Textiles Corporation of America, the ID. So it's that 18 character ID. And if you don't know what that is, if we look here, back here at the account page, up the top here, there is the 18 character ID. So that's what we're talking about. So when we're talking about the record ID for an account, it's always displayed there on the page. Same if we were on a contact record, it would say contact there and then it would have that ID. And the first 3 digits is 001 is an account record. So we get to know what those first 3 digits mean. Okay, so we're just passing that across as text. And normally when you're creating variables here, you don't need to worry about these 2 fields down here, but this one you do. So we need to say this is available for input. So we're saying this variable has got to be available to receive input from somewhere else. And the somewhere else is off that Burlington Textiles page. Okay, so that page is going to pass record ID. If we spell it correctly and get that capitalization exactly right with a capital I there, it will pass across that record ID into here for us, which is important because we're going to need it when we create our contact. Okay, so we've got our first variable. We also want another one, this time for our R contact. Now this is our single record for a contact. Now the reason why we need this is our repeater section has only got 4 fields. It's only got first name, last name, phone number, and email. It doesn't contain the ID of the account. So we're going to have to build up these, and it's in a different format. It's not in a contact record format yet. Okay, so it's just a collection of 4 text fields. Not quite what we want. So we're going to create a new variable that will hold 1 contact. So 1 record of type contact. We don't need it available for input or output. It's staying inside the flow. Okay. So that record ID is one of the rare cases when you'll need to use it for input or output. If you're using subflows and you're passing values from one flow to another, you will use inputs and outputs as well. All right, so this is our single record. So this is when we're going through the loop and building it up. We want one more variable for our record collection of contacts. Now this is so that we can bulkify our record creation at the end. Okay, bulkify means instead of creating one record and then another record and then another record and another record and looping around doing that, which is going to get us in trouble, we say, right, here you go, Salesforce, create these 5 records for us, and it will do them all in one transaction. Okay, so this is also a record, but this time, because we want this to be a collection, so it's like multiple records, we need to check this box here. Okay, so we're ticking that, we're saying, and we've named it that way too, whereas here we said R contact singular. Yeah, now it's RC, record collection of contacts, plural, meaning multiple. Okay, so we've got multiples, and these are also contacts. Okay, again, we don't need input or output. We're just staying inside the flow. All right, so now we've got all of our variables ready to go. Now we can add our screen component. First thing is we give it a name. We'll call it add new contacts. If we click in there, it will populate this, and this will just be a screen. To input new contacts. Okay. Now, here's our repeater section, but I want to show you something first before we put that in. If I take an ordinary text field, okay, here's one here, and I drag that in. Okay, on the right-hand side, okay, so we have a label and an API name and required and default value, but we also have options here to validate the input. So we can set up like a validation rule, and we can provide some help as well, okay? But when we're using the repeater section, we lose that ability to provide that validation. And you'll see that next. Okay, so we now drag our repeater section in. So this is our section that's going to repeat. And you can see that the add button and the remove button is all there automatically. And it's telling us to drag our components to include in the repeater into there. And it's also reminding us this is a beta feature. Okay, thank you. Now, you would think that the first thing we would want here is name, wouldn't you? So we grab our name and we drag it across, and it's actually not going to allow us because we actually want to drag it right in there. If we come down a little bit to when we get a green, you'll see what's happened is it's outside the component. Here's our repeater component down here, and our name has appeared up there. So I'll remove that. I'll just do that again. So when I drag it across, it looks like it's putting it in there, doesn't it? But it's actually not. Where we need to go is right there, and it's got a little you can't go there sign. What's going on? Okay. So name is I suppose what you'd call a complex field. I think there's a proper name for it, but anyway, because it's a little bit more than just a text field, okay? Because name has first name, last name, titles, etc. likewise, when we look at email is a little bit more than just a plain text file. Okay, and some of the other ones. So they're a little bit fancy, and long text and things like that. So they're a little bit fancier than normal. Unfortunately, at the moment, this new repeater component only supports what we call the primitive elements. So primitive things being like text, just plain simple text. And you can see now when I drag that across, it will allow me to put that in there. So I can put text. Can I put URL? No. If I try to put URL, you can see that it's appeared outside of our repeater. So there's only a couple of them at the moment that are valid. So we can do text, and I think we can do number. Yeah, it'll do a number as well. Do number and text and a few others. But of course, phone is another one as well that it won't do. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have 4 text fields. And the other thing I wanted to show, and this is why I showed you the name field or the text field before I put the repeated component on, is now that we've got that text field in here, we've lost our ability to do validation. Okay, so once it's inside the component, the repeater component, unfortunately, we lose that value. All right, so this is a beta feature, and this is one of the reasons why it's beta, is that it's not complete yet. But it gives us an idea of what's coming, so that's okay. We can live with that. So let's put our 4 fields in. So we want first name as the first field. We can do required, but that's about all that we can do. So we can't do any validation on that one. Okay, so there's our first field. The next field we want is last name. So we can do the same for that. And we're inside. You can see we're still inside there. That's okay. We make that one required as well. Now, unfortunately, our phone number is one of those more complex data types, so we can't drag one of those in, and we can't drag in the email one as well. We'll have to use text for both of those. Okay, so we'll drag in 2 of them. So this one will be our phone. We'll make that one required, and then the last one we'll also make required. That will be our email. Okay, so we've got our 4 fields all inside our repeater. And yeah, as we click on each one of them, you can see that, yeah, we've got advanced, but we've lost our validation sections. Okay, what have we done wrong? We've got an error. Oh, maybe we didn't give that section a name. Okay. We can call that repeated section. Oops, can only have underscores. All right, there we go. How about that? Done. Okay. All right, so we've got a screen. We can add our components, and we can add those 4 or 5 records. What we need to do now is we need to add our loop. I'm just keeping an eye on the time there, but this part will be fairly quick. Loop through. So this is the collection that the repeater built for us when we went add and we added the new records. Okay, and that collection variable, here we can see it. It's our repeated section. That's what we called that. And the subcomponent is that all items. Okay. And we're going to go first to last item. Yep, that's okay. All right, so we're going to loop for those. And now for each one, we're going to add a new assignment. Okay, so here is assign. What are we doing here? So here we're assigning our values to the single record. And remember, coming off the repeater, they weren't formatted as a contact record type. Okay, but now they will be because we've controlled that by creating this rcontact. So we're going to say here, we're going to say rcontact. And then the field that we want, the first field that we want, is going to be the account ID, this one. So we're going to say the account ID on this record, because this is the bit that's going to link the contact and the account together, equals our special variable with that special name spelling, that special case record ID. Okay, so this is the Burlington Textiles Corporation ID is going to get passed across in this one. So now we've got a record for a contact with an account ID, but we need to add the other fields. So our contact, and we've got first name equals, now from our loop, and this is the output from the repeater. So we're looping through now. We want first name in there. So from the loop, grab that first name and stick it into the first name on our variable there. It's just a temporary variable until we get to the end. We do another one for last name equals, again, from that loop, last name, our contact. Next we want business phone, it's called, that one, equals one from the loop, phone, and the last one, our contact, email, email equals the one from the loop, email. Okay, so there's our 4 fields that we're populating to our new contact record. Firstly, the account ID, which we passed across from the page via that record ID variable. And then the other 4, we simply grabbed them out of the loop because we're looping through here. Okay, so we've done that part. Now we want to add the assignment for the next bit. And here we are, add single record to the collection. So we take that record, that single one, and we now add it to our collection. So we say our contacts, we're going to add our contact. Okay, so remember, this is our box of all the contacts that we've got. We're just going to add that one that we've just populated, those 5 fields there, that variable there. It's got the 5 fields inside it. We're just going to add that one into there. And we're going to go back to the loop and get the next one, populate the 5 fields, stick them in that box. Keep going until we're finished. Okay, and then the last step is our create records. And that's a pretty simple one. We just need to tell it what we want to do. We want to create multiple records using our collection of contacts. Remember the RC contacts? That's our box with all of those records in it. Okay, we're done. So we're going to give it a name, and I'll name it slightly different to the one I've already got. So I've already got one called repeater, add contacts to. Okay. So far, so good. Last thing to do is activate. If we don't activate it, we'll get in trouble on the next step. Okay, so that's built our flow, but now we need to create that button to run it from. Remember this button up here. So we'll leave that one, or we might get rid of that one, but we'll call our new one repeater 2. So on our account, because that's where we want to put this button, we want to create a new action. And you can see down here we've got repeater. So we just create a new one. And we're going to, action is going to be a flow. And there is our repeater number 2. If you haven't activated, they won't appear in that list. It's a good trick to trick yourself up on. Okay, so we'll call it repeater 2. Okay, so we save that. Okay, we're nearly done. One last step is, let's go to Burlington Textiles. Let's go edit the page, because we want to edit the lightning record page to put it on this button, because I've already got dynamic actions, and I'll show you that. So you want to jump straight in here and edit this lightning record page. Come on. Okay, and if I click in the header section here, I'm using lightning dynamic actions here. So instead of the page layout controlling these buttons, the lightning record page is controlling them. Okay, they're called dynamic actions. So here are the actions. So we want to add a new one, and it's our repeater to this guy. So that was the name of the action. So we're going to add that, and we'll push it up to the top so that it appears there. You can see the old ones there as well. We can probably get rid of that now. And that button is now on our page. We'll save our page. I think it's already activated anyway. Yep. Okay, and we can just simply go back to our page. There's a repeater number 2 button. We're still on Burlington Textiles. We could maybe go try another account. What about Banana Peelers Inc.? They got any contacts? No? Okay, let's do it here then. So now we're running our brand new flow that we just run. So we can be one peeler. One at banana.com. Add, and we'll do 2. Two bananas, 222. Okay, we'll just do 2 of them. And next. And there we have our 2 records. Okay, so our flow has run successfully. We've been able to use this new repeater element. We did note a couple of things about it. One is that it only supports the primitive data types, so only supports things like text, number, few very simple data types. So things like name, email, web, the URL field, not supported yet, but it is a beta feature. And you also notice that we didn't have any validation capabilities. Okay, so again, it's a beta feature. It's only in this pre-release. It's in the Spring 24 as a beta feature. So if you've got access to a pre-release instance, you can get in and have a look, practice with it, and look forward to maybe the next release it having a bit more functionality. Now, I did pose a question with what was wrong with our flow. Let's just go back to it. What was wrong with what we've done so far? And there was something down here around the create records. Did anybody Okay, I'm just having a look through the comments. DML loop, no, it's not a DML loop, Jamie. How does Flow store and manage data during its execution? Okay, so during the execution, during the flow, they're stored in those record collections. Okay, either in the one that the repeater created, they were stored in there in a variable. So it's just stored in memory in a variable. And then in our loop, we pass those values into the single record, and then we move that single record into the collection. And then at the very end, we did an update records, and that's when we said to Salesforce, okay, we did a create records, and we said to Salesforce, okay, so go do a DML for us. Go do a create records with these records for us. And I just saw somebody's got the answer. Update new quote custom action. Yeah, we're on a different track there. Someone's talking about quotes. Yeah, that's a little bit off track. Sikandar Sheikh, sorry, mate. But Ankit's got it. Fault path. Okay, so what does he mean by a fault path? Okay, very quickly, we're close to time. What happens if we get an error here? Okay, so when we get to create records, what happens? Because that button could be on anybody's page, anybody's opportunity page, account page. What if for some reason they only had read-only access to that page and they weren't allowed to create account records? Okay, they might not be able to create contacts either, because security might be controlled by the parent. So because they didn't have create on account, they might not have create on contacts. So this could fail, couldn't it? Okay, there's a number of other reasons why it could fail. Things like maybe they tried to create a duplicate record by mistake. Or maybe in between the flow running and you hitting that create records, you lost your internet connection, or Salesforce went down, or there was some glitch somewhere and something broke. Okay, so we need a way of going, okay, what happens if there's an error here? And this is the method. We can add what's called a fault path. And in here, we can add a screen or an action that can do things like, now this one's a screen flow. So with the screen flow, we can display a message to the user and we can say, oh, sorry, something's gone wrong. And then in the next step, so we can put a screen there to display that to them and tell them that there's a problem there. And then we can add another step after that, and we can do an action and send an email to admin of this instance and say, hey, there was a problem when this user tried to do this and the record was creation. Can you have a look at it? Or you could even go so far as create a case. So if they're using Salesforce cases to manage these sort of faults, you could actually even put a case in there, create a case. Okay, so that's the bit that was missing. And we won't go into details about fault paths, but they are really important. And pretty much any time when you do a create or an update records, sometimes even on a get record, and also certainly on a delete record, you should have a fault path. Okay, and you can create a fault path that calls a subflow in for some types of flows, not all of them. A record triggered flow, for example, can't have a subflow, but screen flows can. So there is different ways that you can handle those. Good question. Good answer there. Thank you. Yeah, Rakesh Kumar is saying also a null check. Yeah, we did have on the screen, we did have validation here to make sure that there was a value put in each one of these fields. So that'll help a little bit. What won't help though, oops, I just shifted those. What won't help is because we've got no validation on email, if I was to enter ABC in there, we would actually get a fault. And this happened to me when I was testing it because we can't do any validation there at the moment. You would actually get a fault because Salesforce would say, hey, you just shove some text into here when I know that this is an email field, and email field requires some text and then an @ symbol and then some more text at the end of it. And what you put in there doesn't match that. So that can generate a problem there. Apart from that, in terms of null values, I think we're pretty much covered there because we've got required. But yeah, a little bit more validation. A validation around phone number format would be nice as well. And we don't have that at the moment. Some of this process can be done in record triggered flow also. Obviously not the repeater section, but some of the fault path stuff can be, yes, but obviously not displaying screens and not calling subflows. All right, I think we're just about out of time. John Peter, thank you very much for allowing me to present this today. If there's anybody got any more questions, filter them through John Peter and he can get hold of me and I can answer the questions. If anybody's interested in learning Salesforce Flow from scratch, then I have a Flow course here. It's affordable. Well, it's reasonably affordable. It's $20 US. Occasionally I have it on special, but we just come off a special recently, so there won't be another one for a little while. $20 US. If you want to learn Flow from scratch, then that's probably a good investment. If you can rustle up somebody with a credit card who's got $20 credit on there, can help you out. Okay, apart from that, thank you very much, and I'll leave you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you, John Peter.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for the great session. It is very informative for our Trailblazers. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.